welcome to another episode of Story in a Nutshell. My name is David Wise, and our guest today is Dianne Cabral. Dianne is a resident here at Shepherd Village, and she has a really interesting story to tell us. So Dianne, tell us a little bit about your early life. Where were you born and where did you live in your early life?
Well, I was actually born in Trinidad, but when I was still an infant, my parents, who were originally from Barbados, decided they wanted to move back to Barbados. So I grew up in Barbados and went to school there at a church Anglican school, which was run by an order of nuns from the UK, from the order of Jesus a Good Shepherd. And so most of my Christian teaching was at school as well. So and I got married at a very young age and had 3 kids.
Right. So so you went to a Christian school, and so where did your faith journey as such begin?
Well, because of it being a Christian school too, we had prayers before school, we had prayers before lunch, we had prayers after lunch, and we had prayers before we left for the evening. And then on special occasions, we had our own chapel on site, so we attended several church services there, along with, during the week, we had several scripture teaching subjects, classes and so on. So all of my Christian teaching, I would say, came during that period of time. And at the age of 10, I remembered making the commitment to follow Jesus. And I've never looked back. I've had my challenges, but I've always tried to follow Jesus.
So you grew up in Barbados, and to me Barbados seems like blue water and blue skies, lots of sunshine and palm trees, and yet here you are now in Canada. So
that's right.
So what prompted you to leave Barbados?
Well, it is very idyllic, the island is, and the people are wonderful. But after 15 years of marriage, unfortunately, my marriage hit a brick wall. And it ended in a very challenging and difficult divorce. And although I gave it 3 years to see if the dust would settle per se, there seemed to be no hope of that happening. And I kept praying, Lord, you've got to have a better life than this for me and for my kids. And please guide me and lead me into what your plan is for my life. And I started thinking then, and friends started to advise me, why don't you apply to, immigrate somewhere? And I had visited Canada years before that and had fallen in love with Canada, so I decided I'm going to start with Canada. And if it's God's will, it will happen. If it's not, I pray I'll have the grace to accept it. So it took me a few months to get everything together, all the paperwork. I had to have a police report and fingerprints done, a medical done, all this. And I remember the night before I put the papers into the embassy. At the time, the embassy was still in Barbados. Now they're in Trinidad. But I remembered holding the brown envelope with all the papers inside and praying over it and saying, Lord, I'm committing this to you. Whatever your plan is for my life, I will follow you. And you will have to open the doors for me to succeed. But I want a better life for myself and my kids, if possible.
Yeah.
And I put it in next day on my way to work. I put it into the embassy. Didn't want to risk putting it in the mail. And as the Lord would have it, I like to say, 6 weeks later, I got a call while I was at work from the embassy saying I had been approved with all 3 children. And I had a year in which to take up the offer, but they would prefer this was in July this was happening, and they would prefer if I could aim to be here for September when the school year started. So that's what brought me to Canada.
So you came here with your 3 children?
Well, actually, no. The boys wanted to stay with their dad, and kids at the age of 9 in Barbados are allowed to make a choice where they want to go, which parent they want to be with. So the boys stayed behind, which broke my heart at the time, but I, again, committed them to the Lord.
Yeah.
And it was hard leaving them behind, but I knew it would be for the best, because what would be the point of bringing them against their will?
Right.
And so only my daughter, who, as it turned out, was 9 when we arrived in Canada, on a Thanksgiving weekend of all things. And since then, I've always celebrated Thanksgiving because I have so much to be thankful for.
Wonderful. So you found work then in Canada. What kind of work did you do?
Well, in Barbados, I worked in a law office, as secretary there. But coming to Canada, by the time we arrived in Canada, I already had housing organized through friends in Barbados who had housing here that they rented. So I had housing here at a very nominal rent, a 4-bedroom townhouse at just $650 a month, which was just incredible. It had to be the Lord's doing. I had my daughter enrolled in school, and 4 days after I landed, the same friends had put my name in at a hotel close by, the Ramada Hotel it was called at the time. It's now called the Edward or something. And they were looking for a secretary for their general manager, who had not had a secretary for 3 months. And they asked if I could start the following day, and I said, well, I can't really, as much as I want the job, because I'm expecting the delivery of my stuff from Barbados tomorrow. But I could start next Monday. And they said, that's fine, you know, come in. I said, you don't want me for an interview? Oh no, just come in, you know, and everything will be fine. So I started there, and I worked there for almost a year, but the salary wasn't great. So I was having difficulty getting ends to meet. So I then put my name in at a recruiting company, and from there it just took off. I doubled my salary the first job I went to, and stayed 9 years in a reinsurance company right downtown Toronto, which meant commuting and so on. But it really helped me to get my roots in and to get settled and so on.
Excellent. But then along the way you had a health crisis.
I did. After a few years here in Canada, the first year was the most difficult because there were times when I was very homesick and missed my kids, and there was not much communication between the kids and myself. We didn't have like emails and FaceTime and that kind of stuff back then.
Right.
I've been here 38 years now. But after a few years, I felt the need to buy a little property of my own. And part of that process was to have a complete medical done. And during that medical, it was discovered that I had a dark shadow on my kidney, and I had 2 large gallstones in the gallbladder. But then of more concern was I had tumors on my liver. And that kind of just pulled the rug from under me. I was devastated with the news. I was angry at the world and angry at God. I felt I wanted to shake my fist at God and say, why now? Now that I'm getting settled, my life is coming together, I'm feeling happier, and I'm making a new life for my daughter. Why now? Anyway, one day at work, my pastor called, and he said to me, he had obviously heard the news, and he said to me, the elders and himself were meeting that evening around 7 o'clock, and they would really like me to be there. They would pray over me, and for God to intervene. And I was in such a state of mind, I really didn't want to go, and he could detect that in my voice. And he said to me, Dianne, we're going to pray for you whether you're there or you're not, but we would prefer for you to be there. I said, okay, I'll think about it. If I turn up, I turn up. If I don't, you'll understand. So I got home, and I mentioned to my daughter, she would have been about maybe 13 or 14 at the time, and she said to me, I told her the story about Pastor Dan calling, and she said, but Mom, what have you got to lose? Out of the mouths of babes, right?
Yes, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, she said, you know these people, they've become your family here in Canada, and they want to pray for you and over you, you know, why not? And I took her by her word. So I drove back down to the church. At the time I was living in Richmond Hill. I drove back down to the church here in Scarborough, and I attended the prayer meeting, and the elders surrounded me, had me sit in a chair. They surrounded me and laid hands on me, and Pastor Dan anointed me with oil. And I couldn't tell you how long they prayed or what they prayed or the words they prayed. I don't remember any of that because I was very distracted with the feeling I was getting. I felt as though a warm bucket of liquid similar to oil was being poured slowly over my head and right down my body, very, like in slow motion. And I was so distracted by this feeling. I could, as I say, I couldn't tell you what they prayed or how they prayed or how long even. When they were finished, I don't know, I must have been in shock because I couldn't even find the words to explain to them what I had felt. So they said, well, we know you have your daughter at home waiting for you, so, you know, we'll continue, we'll wrap up here. If you want to leave, feel free to leave. So I did. And all the way home, I was so puzzled. What happened? I can't put the words to it. I don't know what happened, but something happened. And I remember I walked in the door at home, and my daughter was sitting on a sofa. And she said to me, I saw on her face, she says, Mom, what happened? I said, I don't know. I said, why? Why do you ask? She says, you look totally different.
Really?
And
wow.
I felt this joy within, like I'd come from depression and raking the bottom of the barrel, and I felt this joy overcome me. And I knew that my spiritual feelings had been healed. Instead of being angry now, I was joyful. So whatever happened, anyway, had to wait 2 weeks before they did additional ultrasounds to see what was going on the inside before they proceeded with next steps. The dark shadow on the kidney had cleared up. I still had the gallstones, which were months later then taken away by surgery, but the tumors on the liver weren't there.
So
and I
that was
couldn't
a
believe
miracle.
it. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I said, you've got to be kidding. So, you know, they went over the ultrasounds again and still couldn't find it. The same technician that had done the first ultrasounds was the same technician that did the second set of ultrasounds. So her name was on the films and everything, so she knew it was her. She says, I don't know what's happened here. I said, I know.
Yeah.
And I still had this feeling of joy, like, you know, this
Yeah.
is God. It has to be God.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's, and I've never had problems with the liver since.
So how did that experience sort of affect your future Christian life then?
It
Dianne?
made me feel much closer to God. And I felt like I had gone through struggles in my past, but nothing like to this magnitude. And God had always seen me through my difficulties, but this really impressed upon me that God is still alive. He listens to our prayers, and He is all powerful and all present in every circumstance of our lives. And it
Yeah.
really drew me closer to Him.
So how does that sort of manifest itself here in Shepherd Village? Tell us about your Shepherd Village experience and what's happening here.
Well, funny enough, when I was growing up in Barbados and before I left to come to Canada, I was very shy and introverted. I couldn't carry on a conversation. If you said boo to me, I might run and hide.
You could have fooled me, Dianne.
Well, that's it, because, you know, coming here to Canada to start with, and now to Shepherd Village, when I got the approval to come to Shepherd Village, I prayed, I said, Lord, I'm happy to go to Shepherd Village, but please show me ways that I can continue to serve you. And He has made that possible here at Shepherd Village. I was still working up until last December, the end of December I retired, and now I can get more involved. So I enjoy the prayer meetings here, and I'm taking more and more of a responsibility with Ruth Beaver to help her in her leadership of the prayer meetings on Monday mornings. And I enjoy attending the Bible studies. And my tongue has been loosened because now I can pray openly, and I have no, even coming here to this interview this afternoon, I said to Matthias earlier and to Favor, I'm surprised I'm not nervous about this, because I think God has taken care of that nervousness. He knows that I'm quite capable. He is equipping me to be able to speak out and to speak, to honor Him and glorify Him with how I'm serving Him. And there are other places here at Shepherd Village that I can also be serving Him. And I'm looking for those areas expectantly, knowing that He will guide me and lead me.
Well, that's just wonderful, Dianne, and the fact that you're using your experience and your skill, if you like, and your life journey in service here at Shepherd Village. That's quite wonderful. So, thank you very much for being here today, Dianne.
It's been a
really
real
interesting
pleasure.
story, very
Thank you.
inspiring. Thank you very much.